Good morning. Good morning. This is the Checkin In podcast. My name is Biniam. Welcome to the 84th episode. As we see the weekend approaching, good morning, Brandon. How are you, my friend? We are live streaming on the YouTube channel, Instagram, and TikTok. And thrilled whenever you guys get spend a few moments with us, whether you're watching the live stream portion or whether you're listening on the Spotify recording or YouTube/Instagram recordings as well. Glad to have you guys join in on a Thursday morning. As you can see behind me, the weather forecast isn't so bright this morning. The sun is up, but it's not quite yet. And that is true, Brandon. I am definitely that today is the day. Yes. So looking forward to that as well. But on this episode of the Been Checking In podcast, we do what we usually do, and that is focus on the three key pillars that we are working on a personal level and inviting you in that same process because I love being, I like growing. I like seeing um, change in a good direction. And that's what this podcast is primarily focused on. So, the three key pillars, as most of my regular listeners will already have well memorized, are the awareness piece, the kindness piece, and the happiness piece. And awareness piece, just because awesome, enjoying your podcast every day. I'm glad to see MC. Thanks for listening in. I super appreciate that. The awareness piece is how do we get to know ourselves more? Can I suggest that most of us do not know ourselves as well as we could? And in the absence of knowing yourself well, you are sort of like, I use the analogy quite often of a leaf that's blowing in the wind. You're kind of like blown to and fro at the beck and call of the wind. It's like the social, cultural milieu in which we're in that shifts and tosses us to and fro, especially if we do not know ourselves well enough. And that's something that I want us to work on. Kindness, because we're processing change and we could all use a bit more kindness. And of course, happiness in the midst of all the other emotions, but happiness as a destination point as we process and are willing to go through all of the other emotions. We do that all here on the Been Checking In podcast. Um, I'll tell her that for sure, Brennan. So welcome again to to our 84th episode. We are moving towards 100th episode, and I'm thinking we should do something special. I do not know what yet, but maybe on the 100th episode, I'm going to do maybe a live question and answer with you guys, and just kind of make myself available for like not only the half-hour spell that I usually have this podcast in, but maybe an hour spell. That might be something fun, eh? I think we should totally do something. From Ottawa, hello, Helen, how are you? Good to see you guys coming in. I see you, Grapefruit. Hello. Nice to have you guys joining in. Today's question that we are answering is what encouragement would you give to your past self? What encouragement would you pass on to your past self? This is one of those questions in the department of reflecting on who we were in the past and how that informs us in the present and how we're going forward in the future. I'm a life recalibrator, so that's one of my catchphrases for that role. I help you recalibrate your past so you can rewrite your future. A lot of us struggle in the area of our past. We see the experiences that we've come through in the past, and we sort of we feel like the past almost informs who we are in the present, but not in a helpful way, right? So for those of us who've had really tragic pasts, well, my past is full of tragedy, says my one listener here. To my past self, don't respect unless earned. Gotcha, see, that's yeah, that's a really helpful one. Teaching others how to, in essence, treat you, right? Yeah, for so many of us, our past experiences, especially the challenging ones, inform almost in a certain sense our worth in the present, which puts us at a disadvantage as we go into the future because we have this warped sense of who we are based on our past challenging and unpleasant experiences. So, what does it look like to recalibrate those past experiences and see them as working for you to become a better you, even in the present? How can we recalibrate it? How can we recapture those, change the narrative, change the storyline in our mind and then say, no, this is something that is not game over for us. We're in essence walking into our power. We're walking into our true selves. And that's something that brings me tremendous joy, excitement as I think about it for myself and then as I encourage others towards that same end. That is a really important part. And one of the key focuses of why I'm doing this podcast. This podcast, again, is not for you guys per se necessarily, but for me, first and foremost. Julian, my friend, good to see you in here. How are you? So, what encouragement would you give to your past self? Let's talk about the word encouragement. How's my appointment? Julian, thanks for asking. So, for those of you who are listening in or keeping track with what's going on, yesterday was a significant day for me, amongst many other significant days these past few days, which have been challenging as well. So, yesterday I went for an interview. This was a discouraging decision that I made because I had set my heart on working for myself going forward in the future, and I love that dynamic. But my business pursuits just haven't quite taken off as I was hoping they would. And so I made the decision I'd have to go back to work. I still am going to drive for Uber. I'm still logged in and present with them. I just haven't been driving because at the moment I can't quite afford the insurance to get my Uber back on the road. In the meantime, I'm going to go to work. And so I went for an interview yesterday to be a garbage truck driver. Quite a contrast, isn't it? Driving for Uber to driving garbage truck. And so I made that decision just to help shift my finances back into the green zone because I've sort of been doing a lot more investment in the business that didn't quite take off. And so here I am in this new season, about to have new experiences and learn some things along the way. So I had an interview yesterday. The interview went very well, Julian. Thank you for asking. And I am going to make a video about that sometime in the next couple of days so that I can keep everyone abreast. But you guys get advance notice of what's been going on there here on the podcast. So I thank you for being a part of my life and tracking along and following along with those shifts that have been affecting me. Any tips to grow a beard? I'm being asked. I think you're kind of stuck if genetics isn't playing in your favor. I don't work at growing a beard. It just happens. In fact, I'm the only one in my family of the guys who's able to grow a full beard. My dad can't do it. My brothers either can't pull it off. So somewhere along the way, I got the right mix there, and so I'm grateful. I guess I don't have to work hard at it. I'll message you about the interview. Awesome. Thanks, Julian. Yes, so that is what happened yesterday. I went for an interview. Interview went very well. I think I'll be starting later next week for working as a garbage truck driver. I will share with you as many experiences as I can and insights about life in general. So stay tuned. I'd appreciate that for sure. You're such a nice guy, dude. Gotta go, but God bless you. Same to you, my friend. I appreciate you tuning in for a wee bit here. So, what encouragement would you give to your past self? Is the question we're answering today on our podcast. I want to talk about the word encouragement first. Let's maybe define that word so we know what we're talking about. Hey, Ollie, I was just saying, yeah, the interview went well. I should be starting next week. Later next week is the plan for that. So, thanks for following up on that. So, I, uh, I, encouragement. There we are. I'm just gathering my thoughts as I keep up with all the questions coming in. I like your honesty all the time, Biniam. Thank you. I appreciate that. That is something that is important to me now in this season. I've lived for a long time outside of that zone, and so I want to be there now. Congratulations. Thank you, Ollie. Appreciate that. Encouragement. I would describe encouragement as communication that is designed to shift one's perspective from a pessimistic one to an optimistic one. That's how I probably describe the word encouragement off the top of my mind. I don't look up these definitions in advance. I just kind of roll with it. I love rolling with it and sharing, hey, here's my fresh take at this moment right now as I reflect on these questions that I usually answer on the Ben Checkin In podcast. Encouragement. That communication of various forms, whether it's you're receiving a gift or you're hearing some feedback or some affirmations from others. Thanks, Brandon. And then you're taking that and that communication that is offered or given to shift one's perspective from a pessimistic one to an optimistic one. That's how I define the word encouragement. So, what kind of encouragement would you give to your past self? I think this also makes me reflect on the fact that for most of us, we are in need of encouragement at some point in time, which means there is some acknowledgement that there is change that's going on in our lives as we are experiencing various things in our periphery. As you're experiencing these things, there are some things that are encouraging, and you're like, "Whoa, I'm on cloud nine. This is amazing." And then there are certain experiences that are down in a really low atmospheric level where you're like, "Oh, this really is challenging," kind of like what I've been going through. And so, as we go through those changes, as we go through those experiences where you're like, "Okay, here's what I'm seeing or experiencing, and it's not so great." Those are the times I think when encouragement makes its greatest impact. When you have people in your life who are willing to invest in you and encourage you, that's the time when you really hope to get that feedback, that communication that is designed to take you from a pessimistic stance to an optimistic one. It's during tough times. I've definitely gotten encouragement when I am doing really well and I'm feeling really good about myself and so on. And it was nice, and yet it wasn't as impacting as when I really needed to hear it, and it's like, "Oh, this is what I need right now." Josh, the interview went great. I think I got the job. I should be starting next week, later next week. So thanks for following up on inquiring. Hey, wishing you all the best in your new journey, says Calgary Gal. Any new experience has value. I think you're totally right there. Yes, so true. Sometimes you're just not thrilled about those shifts. And this is where I acknowledge that things are beyond our control sometimes. And there are lessons to learn in the midst of all that. So I'm also aware of that. I'm aware that as I move into these new experiences, I'm calibrating for things that are beyond my control. So thank you for the well wishes, friends. I super appreciate that. Josh says, Congrats. Thank you. So appreciate you guys. Look at that. We're talking about encouragement today, and you guys have, for me, been a tremendous source of encouragement. And I want to say thank you for that. Thank you for that because, especially when we're in those time zones, those seasons of life where you're just not sure you have all the answers. And as you're going through it, it's like, okay, how do I sort of like move now to the next level of keeping on going, right? So you guys have been really active in offering and encouraging and affirming me in the midst of change. I'm in the midst of change that isn't so much fun as I'm reflecting on it. And yet, in the midst of that change, you're saying, "Hey, you got this. It's not game over." You guys, yeah, you guys have been so wonderful in your encouragement. So I'm a creator. I'm a content creator that is really fortunate to have had the love and adoration of so many of his followers. Thank you. I appreciate you guys. So I was reflecting on that part that encouragement usually means a lot more when someone is in a challenging circumstance, right? That's when it fits the bill. It's an analogy I'd probably use is imagine when you are hungry. When you're hungry, you really appreciate food that's offered to you. You're like, yes, please. And you just kind of wolf it down, right? But imagine you just finished a feast and then you go to visit a friend and they offer you food. You're not hungry anymore. So you're not as receptive to that offer of food because you don't need it as much. You're not hungry. You're well taken care of on the food department. Same thing with encouragement. When you're doing really well, the effect of encouragement isn't as great as when you're really discouraged, when you're really needing um, some some helpful words spoken into your life during a time of challenge. That is really, really a visceral sort of a response for me when I'm like, hey, this was really meaningful at this time right now because I needed to have that affirmation, that encouragement that says it's not game over, keep going, we got this together. So I really appreciate that. Now, what encouragement would I give to my past self? This is what would I say to my past self that would shift me from the discouraged category to the encouraged category, from the pessimistic side to the optimistic side? What kind of words would I use? What kind of ideas would I put together to encourage myself? Um, a good question might be for some, why would we bother doing this? Why would we bother doing this to our past selves when it's already said and done, right? Why would we want to talk to our past selves when we can't change our past? What's the point of speaking encouragement to our past selves or thinking what that looks like when it almost seems like there is no need to do that in the present because the past has already been done? I'm not sure if you guys thought of that question, but that's something that occurred to me. What's the purpose? What's the point of speaking to my past self with encouragement when that encouragement isn't going to really serve me in those past moments that have transpired and they've moved on? They're gone out of my reach. I think that question can be well answered in that the effects of the past continue to carry on into our present. And in some way, addressing that past self from which we're still operating from potentially is really, it serves us well in bringing us to the place of saying, can we see ourselves holistically as one continuum across time? So in my awareness, my past self continues to influence my present self that has an idea of where it's moving into in the future. So just like I was mentioning earlier, with the recalibration theme that I have as a life recalibrator, I help others recalibrate their past so that they can rewrite their future. And that's kind of the same theme here. Same theme where I'd say, my past self, if I don't address what's gone on in the past, if I don't come to peace and an acknowledgement of what happened in the past and how it's serving me in the present, I'm still at the mercy of the past self dictating my present that goes into my future. And so that's why I feel this is important in considering and saying, don't see your past self as disjointed from you, but see your past self as that continuum of your identity, your person, even into the present. Your past self and how you experience those experiences in the past continues to inform who you are. For example, someone was mentioning here that they appreciate how I'm committed to being honest in the way I communicate with you guys about my life, my experiences, my thoughts, all of who I am. And that I was mentioning was unusual because in the past that wasn't a priority for me in the past. And so that not being a priority in the past, I made decisions along the way that um, became patterns that brought me to a place where I wasn't um, I wasn't in the best place, right? I wasn't communicating forthrightly with integrity, and now those are really important because I've learned some hard lessons, and I'm like, this is something I don't want to lose. But that took me reflecting on my past and saying, here's a pattern that brought me to this present place that continues to inform how I am. How can I shift that path that lacked integrity so that now I can become a person of integrity, someone who's honest, someone who has a credibility, that's important for me. So the past continues to inform our present, hence why it's beneficial for us to consider talking to our past self and saying, so, Biniam of the past, here's some encouragement I'll give you that you probably didn't get when you needed to hear it. And I want to speak that to my past self so that I can do some healing as I'm going into my present and into the future. When we speak to ourselves, encouragement in our past experiences, I believe it takes us from that category of discouragement, that category of pessimism, that it's not going to change, you're always going to be this way, to, oh, it's possible to change and you can be someone who you want to become. That's why I think this is important. Does that make sense to you guys? That's how my mind operates, at least. The question again is, what encouragement would you give to your past self? And the importance of doing that, I think, is it informs who we are in the present and going into the future. By the way, if you're asking how I'm doing today, I'm feeling a little tired today for some reason. I'm feeling a little tired and I have a bit of a headache as well, which is unusual for me when I'm waking up. So I'll probably do some self care today so that I can tend to my body well. But that's where I'm at. So moving on. What are my responses to how I would encourage my past self? What would I say to my past self? I think for me, I'd probably stay very close to the three pillars of this podcast because they are so informative and impacting on my life. The three pillars, again, that I talk about often are I'd want to be more aware of myself, learn to be kind to myself, and to pursue happiness in the midst of all that. Not so much the third one, because I think I did experience quite a bit of happiness in a warped way, in my codependent way, because I was really good at that. But definitely the first two. So the awareness piece, I would say, would be important because I didn't. I didn't invest in getting to know myself well enough in my past to be able to say, okay, here's who I am and here's how I want to go into my future. So I would probably say to my past self, Binyam, it's really worthwhile that you get to know yourself because yourself is worth getting to know. I diminished my worth heavily in my past where I said, Biniam doesn't matter, but everyone else does. So I'm on everyone else's schedule. So I'll diminish Biniam's needs and heighten others' needs in my economy of priorities. That's the Biniam of the past. I wasn't aware during the season that this is what I was doing. So I would say awareness is really important so I could see that this is happening. Awareness and understanding to say, okay, here's what's happening, but what are my other options? Do I only have this option or do I have other options I can consider and then choose a different way if there's one that serves me better? So I would encourage myself saying, Binyam, how can you get to know you because you're so worthwhile getting to know? In the same way that others may enjoy you, how can you enjoy your company? How can you enjoy your existence? How can you enjoy knowing about yourself well enough that you know which way is important for you as you're seeing your world, as you're seeing your experiences in this world? How to be able to affirm that legitimacy of my existence in being aware of it and saying, this is really important, right? That's probably what I would say for starters. Because when I look at my past, it was just like a fog that I was in, right? A fog where, yeah, I was living experiences. I was going through the motions in life, but I was on other people's schedules and I was more aware of what their input was. I was more aware of what their concerns were. I agree. Understanding yourself and being comfortable in your own company is so important, says Calgary Gal. You and I are very resonating that way, dear. So, yeah, what would that look like to be able to speak to myself that way in the past and saying, that's okay that you were in that zone. You were working with the best that you had in your experience, in your arsenals of options. But now, knowing what you know now, here's what I would say to my past self and almost give myself that permission to say, you're good as you are. You're unique and you are valuable. Your worth is inestimable because of your existence. The space you take up is so important. People are shocked, says Calgary Gal, that I say no when I need time and to enjoy my own company sometimes. I know that's a really important part there, isn't it, Calgary Gal? Wouldn't it be nice to have known that once upon a time so that we can teach others about the legitimacy and the priority that we take for ourselves? In essence, teaching them that we are valuable and we also are not always on their schedule or available on their demands, right? That we also have our own priorities, of which we're one of them. That's something I wonder if most people in life today don't have access to because they don't have this lens from which to look through, right? They're still somewhat diminishing their worth this way. That's what I would say. Taylor, thank you. I appreciate you. So that is probably where I would start saying, Biniam, of my past. I want to encourage you to take time out for you, just like you were saying, Calgary Gal. Um, you are valuable. Take self care, and I encourage it. Yeah, I love that. That's really, really, I resonate with that too, Calgary Gal. So that's where I'd start in saying, Biniam, be aware of yourself. And in being aware of yourself, how can you legitimize that awareness of your existence, saying you're important to be able to make your boundaries, you're important to be able to prioritize your needs, whether it's sleep, whether it's time out, like Calgary Gal was saying, whether it's spoiling yourself, whether it is doing things that rejuvenate you, even if it involves hanging out with friends or choosing who your friendships are, right? All of these things are, I think, really important along those lines. And then secondly, it's the happy, or not the happiness piece, but the kindness piece. Again, I learned at an early age how to diminish and detract myself, how to dismantle and deconstruct myself in a way that says, I'm going to break you down into parts, Biniam, and the parts are going to be less valuable than even the whole itself. And now I'm in a totally different season, thankfully, where I'm like, actually, I see myself and I have come to acknowledge that I'm okay at this present point, given all my strengths and all my challenges. The me right now is so worthwhile. That was a really important starting place for me. Did not have access to that when I was younger. And I see in the absence of having that in the past, oh, that was a challenging time. I was my worst critic, super harsh on myself. And that was not me extending kindness to myself. So I'd say to my past self, Benjamin, in your past, um, in the same way that you are generous and lavish in the expressions of kindness you give to everyone around you, take a significant chunk of that for yourself. Apply a significant amount of that for yourself, because in doing so, you're able to almost apply like lotion on super dry skin in a figurative sense. You're able to take the lotion of kindness and apply it to your psyche, to your heart, to your mind, and say, I am so worthwhile of showing myself care and love and affirmation and acceptance. Um, just that acknowledgement piece that enables you to say, hey, your present self is a mix of good things and challenges. So you don't have to try and present perfection. Work at being okay with you as you presently are. Super Man says, let your unique, awesome, and positive energy inspire confidence in others. Appreciate that encouragement. Thank you, friend. Yeah, that's another thing that I would say to my past self. And in doing so, as I speak this encouragement of my past self, of not only saying, hey, you are totally legitimate in your existence, and in your existence, it's really important to be aware of who you are so you know what kind of decisions match and resonate with your values and your commitments in life. And secondly, what it looks like to be able to apply that lotion of kindness on this parched and dry skin of my psyche, of the way I see myself. How can I be kind to myself? All that is really important way that I would super encourage my past self to be able to say, hey, Binyam, this is what it looks like for you now to walk into your experience of life from a reference point that you are able to communicate to others, that you are also a priority to yourself, just as you want to also tend to and communicate with the world around you. That's probably what I would say to myself back then. And in saying that to myself back then, it almost brings a certain level of healing to that past self that informs my present awareness of who I am as I reflect on my past. I'm changing the narrative from the past to I'm worthless and I'm not worthy of love to I am worthwhile and worthy of love even back then. And as I reflect on those experiences now, I'm shifting the lens now to say my past is not a write-off. My past does not have to be painful. The very things I went through can be something that serves me in the strength category as I go forward now, to be able to say, world, here's Binyam. I'm ready to do business. I'm ready to engage. I'm ready to be present and giving you the full flavor of who I am, because in doing so, we're giving a tremendous gift to those around us. You understand how powerful it is to be able to give your true self, to be able to give your true self and say, here's who I am, and I'm going to give that to you as a gift so that you get to have me unleashed. You get to have me in my power, in my strength, in my meanness. That's a beautiful gift. It's a painful thing for friends to realize that the you that they got was not authentic, right? It's like going into a Louis Vuitton store and you expect to buy the original, not a fake product, right? You want to give the real you to those in your world, because in doing so, they get to have closer access and intimacy with you in the context of that connection. So worthwhile. So, dear friends, the sum of today's podcast: be kind to yourself as you're growing aware of yourself. It's worthwhile to go into your past and make peace with who you once were and affirm that, acknowledge the lessons you're taking and the kind of strength it took to make it through that. That's a beautiful thing to be able to reflect on. It informs and empowers you in the present to launch off into the future from a place of awareness again, that also is administering a generous dose of kindness to yourself in the meantime. Thanks for joining this 84th podcast. I look forward to catching up with you for Friday tomorrow. Love you guys.